Afternoon. How are you? We're quiet. All right, so I want to start by telling you a story. And I want it to go like this. So I do surgery. I'm a weight loss surgeon. And I've been doing it for over 20 years. So I want to tell you a little bit about my own story, which goes like this. In about 2003, I weighed about 80 pounds more than I do now. And I had all set to have weight loss surgery. And I believe in weight loss surgery. I do weight loss surgery. But I realized that, and I had my surgeon picked out. It was in another city. I had it all planned out. And then I decided that I wanted to find out what my successful patients did. Because weight loss surgery, you can have very good success in the first year, the second year, the third year. But it's really, what's 5 years out? What do they do? So I had a huge database of them, and I got all these successful patients, and I asked them all these questions. What do you eat? What don't you eat? Do you eat this? Do you eat that? Do you eat the other thing? And there was all this data that came back, tons and tons of data. And I did this for, about a year, because I wanted to really define it. All right, 77% of them exercise, that's great. Then I discovered something that was sort of profound. When I asked them what they used to eat before and what they ate now, they ate differently. None of the things that they used to eat, they ate now, with a little tiny exception. But here was the biggest thing. They all cooked. Before surgery, none of them had cooked. They ate out. They typically ate out at restaurants. I can name the chain restaurants for you. You've heard about them. If you ever think you can get lobster for $9.99 a pound, you're crazy. They didn't go to those restaurants anymore. And whenever you go to those restaurants, if you've ever been to those restaurants, you'll see that they pile on huge amounts of food. Lots and lots of food. And nutritionally, it's kind of crap. So my patients were going out a lot and eating a lot of crap. And I examined what I had done that had gotten me to that 80 pounds in those last few years. And what I had done is I had left my own kitchen. Now, I still loved going to kitchen stores, and I had all these beautiful things that I hadn't used in years. But I realized that for the last few years, even though I love great restaurants, have been going out to great restaurants for years, I was eating out at these same places. So in order to set myself up for this, I said, you know what? And my surgeon that was in San Francisco, Dr. Rabkin, I was talking to him about this. I said, let's put it off for a little while because I want to make sure I can do this afterwards. So I went back to cooking. And simple stuff that I could make, and I realized several things. Number one, it took me less time to go home and cook a meal than go out to a restaurant. Number two, not only did it take me less time, I saved a lot of money. I enjoyed cooking. It was very, very therapeutic for me. Number three, I was starting to lose weight. Not much. But I noticed after the first year I had lost 10 pounds. And I wasn't eating the same at all. I wasn't trying to eat terribly healthy. I was trying to just eat good food that I made. So I said, let's just put it off a little bit. So every year, for 10 years, for the last 10 years, I've lost between 5 and 10 pounds. And I did that by cooking. And the only time that that didn't work was when my wife was pregnant, because when she was pregnant, she was eating things that I shouldn't have eaten, like ice cream every night, but she was pregnant. And you can't let a pregnant woman eat ice cream alone. It's the law. So, with that exception, I lost weight every year. So then, I started continuing looking at my patients. I mean, constantly questioning successful ones and patients who aren't successful. Because a lot of times, weight loss surgery is, you probably all have known patients who've had weight loss surgery and they've regained all their weight. Anybody notice that? Anybody know anybody like that? Yeah? No? Yes. Kind of sad, isn't it? And sometimes what those patients think is, it's the operation that failed. It's not the operation that failed. It's what they did with it. The operation is just a tool. So here's what started happening in my practice. I found that I was doing less and less time with patients doing surgery and spending more and more time teaching them to cook. And I found that the more I got my patients to cook and started following them prospectively, the more successful they were. So whereas before someone would come in to me for surgery and I would say, here are all the risks of surgery, here's all the bad things that you can die, and all these other bad things can happen to you, and they do. Surgery is a big, major deal. And you have to agree to undergo this if you want this, and you have to agree to undergo that these are the risks, and your family has to know these are the risks, because I don't want to, it's not that you need to know these are risks. So that's part of what we have to do, which is informed consent. Now my conversation with patients is this way. When they come in to me, I say, here is this rather large consent form, but I want you to look at page 2. Page 2 on my consent form has nothing to do with the surgery risks or benefits. Page 2 on the consent form now says, if you don't cook, you're going to learn to cook. If you do cook now, you're going to agree to learn to cook differently, and I will help you do that. So our consent form is in. And then so when the patient says, well, my wife does all the cooking, it's like, no, that can't be anymore. You have to cook. You can't depend on your wife. And by the way, if you go to restaurants, the restaurants you go to, you have to agree you're not going to go to them. So as a whole, we sort of take patient data and we can say, in any given year, in the first year after our weight loss surgery, before I started doing this, the average person in the first year would lose about 53% of their excess body weight. Okay, so if you had 100 pounds to lose the first year, you'd lose about 53 pounds. After we started doing this, and we tracked the patients who did this, their excess weight loss was 70 to 90% of their excess weight loss. It wasn't the surgery. We didn't do anything different with the surgery. It was all about teaching them to cook. I'll tell you another story. I'm on social media a lot. I write 5 different blogs. I'm on Twitter. I have 2 different Twitter handles, Doc Simpson, Terry Simpson. Feel free to follow, interact. I interact a lot. Mostly when I'm in the kitchen. I have the iPad set up, so I can do that. And so I had this one blog from this woman who was upset at Kraft because Kraft had genetically modified food in their mac and cheese that she was going to feed to her children, and she was very upset and wanted all these petitions to sign. And my response to her is, you're nuts. And her first response to me is, I must be employed by Monsanto. There were 2 things that were wrong with the label that she had put up. Number one, it was a fake, because there is no Kraft macaroni and cheese that has that particular label, so it was a made-up label photoshopped in. That was bad in itself. But the second problem is this. You're a mother and you're feeding your kid this crap? You're more worried about this when you're feeding your son or daughter this processed piece of garbage? You're feeding your child this. And you want to have a bunch of us come and rally against Kraft because they made this product. It's like, I'm sorry, Kraft, your rat poison for my son isn't good enough. I want it to be natural rat poison. So I get in a lot of trouble for that. And that's the whole thing. When I was on a gluten panel before, and we were talking about this, they were raging against how they couldn't, this was a great gluten panel, by the way, they were raging against how, this was a different one, how they couldn't get these items in the grocery store anymore. And I'm looking at them and saying, why don't you learn to cook? Why don't you just learn to cook? Why don't you just go to your kitchen, those beautiful copper saucepans that you've never used, that you've polished, why don't you learn to use them and to cook? And they all looked at me like I was nuts, because it was just the craziest thing in the world. So my entire practice and outlook about health has changed tremendously. As I watched my weight down, my patient's weight go down, is simply this. You have to take control of your life and your health by what you eat. And you may think that it's okay to leave that in someone else's hands, but what you eat is too important to leave to someone else's hands. And like I like telling my patients when they say, I'm just too busy to cook, I say to them very simply, I'm a busy surgeon. When I go, and I have a 3-year-old at home, which if cooking doesn't help you do something like that, I don't know what will. I mean, I'm not a young man. The bottom line is, if I have time to cook, so do you. If I have time to prepare my family's meals, so do you. If I can take the time to go to a grocery store every day to find out what's fresh in there, so do you. When I come home from a busy day at work, my wife says, "What do you want to eat tonight?" I say, "I don't know. We'll go to the market and we'll see what's there." And that's transformed lives. And so while I've done a lot of weight loss surgery and written books about it and stuff, and everybody talks, isn't it great to transform lives? This is where my mind has gone. I like doing surgery. I like doing surgery a lot. I was serious. I would have biopsied her intestines right here. But I like transforming lives now in the kitchen. I like being able to teach people how to cook simple things that are good for them, that they can do easy, and that's what I want you to do. So the message I want you guys to take home is simple. Get an apron, learn to cook. It's the most empowering and best thing you can do for yourself. Thank you.